Retirement in Australia. How much super do you need? By Christopher Niche. This article in 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 factors determine the required savings amount: income, lifestyle, and life expectancy. The commonly cited 1.6 million Australian dollar figure is an attempt to address longevity considerations. The ASFA's benchmark retirement income is known as the ASFA Retirement Standard. For some Australians, 500,000 Australian dollars in super and the age pension would be enough to maintain their standard of living. What's a comfortable retirement income, and how much super do Australians need to achieve it? It depends on who you ask. As they approach retirement, many Australians start questioning whether their superannuation balance is adequate. Perhaps they need to save some more. A commonly cited figure is 1.6 million Australian dollars. But that is not an easy target for many people to achieve. Some experts say such a sum could result in them saving more than they need for retirement. Ultimately, there is no correct figure, says Robert Bianchi, Professor of Finance at Griffith University and the Director of the Griffith Centre for Personal Finance and Superannuation. He says there are 3 factors that determine how much in retirement savings a person needs. The first is sources of income: superannuation, non-super savings, and the age pension. Second is the lifestyle they want to lead in retirement. And thirdly, their expected lifespan, which Bianchi describes as the real big unknown. Superannuation is designed to last 20 to 22 years, and, on average, about 50% of retirees will need their superannuation to last longer, in some cases much longer. Bianchi says he believes the 1.6 million Australian dollar figure is an attempt to address this longevity risk. Additionally, a 1.6 million Australian dollar individual superannuation balance is the level above which many of the superannuation tax concessions cut out, which may be another reason this figure is so often cited. Bianchi's modelling suggests that someone with 500,000 Australian dollars in super would run out of money, but 1.6 million Australian dollars is probably enough. The magic number is probably somewhere in between, he says. Nonetheless, Australian super balances mostly fall well short of even $500,000. A report from the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, ASFA, found that in 2015 to 2016, the average superannuation balance for men was $111,853 Australian dollars and $68,499 Australian dollars for women. The balances for those nearing retirement were better, but still short. For people aged 60 to 64 years, the average balance was $270,710 Australian dollars for men and $157,050 Australian dollars for women. What a modest retirement lifestyle looks like. ASFA sets a benchmark retirement income known as the ASFA Retirement Standard. For a modest retirement lifestyle, better than the age pension, but still only able to afford fairly basic activities, an annual income of $27,648 Australian dollars is required for a single person, and $39,755 Australian dollars for a couple, recommends ASFA. ASFA defines a comfortable retirement lifestyle as enabling an older, healthy retiree to be involved in a broad range of leisure and recreational activities and to have a good standard of living through the purchase of such things as household goods, private health insurance, a reasonable car, good clothes, a range of electronic equipment, and domestic and occasional international holiday travel. This requires an income of $43,317 Australian dollars for a single person and $60,977 Australian dollars for a couple. All calculations assume that the retirees own their own home. Bianchi says, however, that aspiring to the ASFA modest retirement standard is not the answer. To make Australia a better society, we need to ask what are the policies and what can we do to assist people to a more comfortable way of life in retirement. That's where I think we need a high superannuation contribution rate, and we need people to put more money away, particularly if we're going to have a lower return world in years to come, he says. To achieve a comfortable retirement income by the ASFA standard, a couple would need a combined superannuation balance of a little over 800,000 Australian dollars, argues Nathan Zahm, Senior Investment Strategist at Fund Manager Vanguard. A couple who retired at age 66 with this super balance could be 95% certain that their funds would last for the next 30 years. While this figure won't apply to everyone, it is a good guide, he says. The calculation assumes that when the couple retires, they receive a very small age pension, but as they run down their superannuation balance over the subsequent years, their pension entitlement grows. Will you have to scrimp and save? However, many people don't want to run down their retirement balance, and so lead a more frugal life than is necessary, says Zam. Once people do retire, they have a tendency to be very conservative with their spending. They often will anchor to whatever balance they had when they retired. Zam says higher super savings targets tend to come from financial advisors who, as a rule, serve wealthier individuals. If a couple was accustomed to living on a combined salary of 150,000 Australian dollars or 200,000 Australian dollars, an annual budget of 60,000 Australian dollars may not really be the retirement they were hoping for, he says. The savings targets can also rise quickly if people want a higher retirement income, because the pension cuts out completely once a home-owning couple has assets over 853,000 Australian dollars, excluding the value of their home. Thus, a couple wanting an annual income of 80,000 Australian dollars, that would last for a 30-year period with 80% certainty, would need about 1.6 million Australian dollars, says Zam. Brendan Coates, a tax, economics and budget researcher at the Grattan Institute think tank, says the current superannuation system, with a 9.5% superannuation guarantee contribution, where an employer contributes the equivalent of 9.5% of a person's wage to their superannuation account, and the age pension, are enough for people to have an adequate retirement income. By adequate, we mean a retirement income that gives them the same living standard in retirement as they had during working age. That's the critical point, he says. If you're earning 150,000 Australian dollars a year or 120,000 Australian dollars a year before you retire, then you might need 70,000 Australian dollars or 80,000 Australian dollars in retirement. But if you were earning 50,000 Australian dollars beforehand, then you probably need 35,000 Australian dollars to 40,000 Australian dollars in retirement. ASFA's guides take a one-size-fits-all approach, he says. As superannuation balances grow, one thing is certain. There will be continuing debate on how much Australians need to save for their retirement. CPA Australia members can read the Australian Master Superannuation Guide by emailing cpalibrary@cpaaustralia.com.au.